NC pork, good for the plate, great for the state. Welcome into a special edition of Bold North State Football Weekly here on the North Carolina Sports Network. I'm Mike Waddell, and I'm joined this week by one of our co-hosts this fall, Tim Brewster. He is a coach that has done it all. He has won championships. He has coached Hall of Famers, worked with Hall of Famers, and now you have made it here to the promised land, Tim, the North Carolina Sports Network. Let's start at the beginning. What first lit the fire for your passion for the sport of football?
Well, Mike, it's awesome to be on the show with you. We've talked about this for quite some time, but being able to share my love for the game and my experiences that I've had in the game are what it's all about. And I ask the players, I tell the players, hey, if you love football, football will love you back. And football has been an amazing love for me in my life, my family. We've all had an amazing journey in the game, and it's so, Mike, I think the thing that's really, really cool is how diverse my journey has been. We started in high school. I was a graduate assistant, started in high school, and then got into the college game, and then coached in the National Football League, and been a head coach. We've done a little bit of everything, and most importantly, Mike, it's been an amazing blast. I've had a great time.
We're going to talk about the 2025 season coming back. We're going to go back through your past all the way back to Jersey and Pennsylvania to Pasadena City Junior College and the University of Illinois. But I have to ask you, before we get into your background, what do you think about the current landscape of college football? Because it was a year ago where you had to take over a program midstream down in Charlotte, and you led the 49ers to a string of great wins. Man, this is a different environment, though, in 2025 than it was back when we met in 1991.
It really is, Mike. And you know what? It's probably not all for the good. I think that there's some tweaks that need to be made. And, we've lost some of the legendary football and basketball coaches, Mike, because of the current landscape with NIL and revenue sharing and that type of thing. And basically what's sad about it, Mike, is it just comes down to, again, who's got the most money in their pocket, who has the most revenue, the most money where they can pay these kids. I've always been always been one of the top recruiters in college football, and it's so different now, Mike, whereas a kid will very candidly just say, hey, Coach Brew, I love you to death. You are absolutely awesome. You're a great coach, great human being, but it's going to come down to how much money, what type of package are we looking at coming together with here? And so it's made it really different. The portal, Mike, holy cow. It's like you're reworking your whole roster every single year. You're at a place like Charlotte, and you recruit these kids and you develop these kids, and then those kids come and get poached. They come and get recruited by Power 4 schools and that type of thing. And so you have to be light on your feet, man, and you just have to adjust and adapt to the current surroundings, or else you're just not going to be successful.
You've coached at North Carolina with Matt Brown, with Jimbo Fisher. Do you have to be at one of those established blue blood programs now at Ohio State, at Texas, to have a legitimate shot at winning? Or can schools in North Carolina, the North Carolinas, the NC States, the Dukes and Wakes, Appalachian, East Carolina, Charlotte, can these schools even have a chance in this modern era of college football?
Mike, it's a lot harder. These are great schools that you're talking about. I mean, the traditional Tobacco Road schools, for years, have been really good programs, and you build your programs based on stability. Mac Brown at North Carolina forever, and Clawson at Wake Forest, and Dorn at North Carolina State, and they've built these programs on kids that are amazingly loyal to their school. They love their school. And what's so sad, Mike, is I think we're losing some of that. We're losing some of that where kids are saying, "Hey, this is my school. I love my school. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here." Now, you have other schools recruiting your roster during the season. During the season in which they're playing, you have other coaches calling and asking about your interest. And the really crazy thing today now, Mike, is the fact that all these kids have agents. They all have agents. I mean, the high school kids have agents today, but the college kids all have people that are helping them with the process and that are making the behind the scenes phone calls and, lining up the opportunities to make more money and go to a different program. And so to answer your question, it's absolutely going to be harder to sustain success at the schools in North Carolina, as than it was, years ago.
Hey folks, David Glenn here. Game day just got easier thanks to NC by Train. Whether you're headed to Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, or Greensboro, skip the traffic and enjoy the ride. You get free Wi-Fi, comfy seats, and direct access to top sports towns, all at great prices. Learn more at ncbytrain.org and travel smarter to your next game. NC by Train. Go. Connect.
We're talking with Coach Tim Brewster here on Bold North State Football Weekly. I'm Mike Waddell, and it's a rarity that you get a former AD and a broadcaster along with a former head coach and a guy who is getting it done as one of the best recruiters in the history of high school football. But you just touched on something, and we're going to go back to your background in a second, but you made this entree too easy. When you're recruiting right now and you're at an Appalachian State, a Charlotte, and East Carolina, that second tier of Division I football, so to speak, do you focus your recruiting on high school kids, or do you try to go ahead and get men out there that have already played maybe 2 years and are going to give you a solid 2 years on the back end?
Well, again, Mike, you just go, you'd love stability. Okay. But I'm just going to tell you, I don't see any way that schools like East Carolina and Charlotte and App State, that they're going to be able to keep the really good players that they have on their roster because they just don't have the finances to compete against the Power Four schools and the bigger schools. And so I just think that the game is totally changed that way. I think these young kids are, you can't fault them, even though I think that, hey, Kirby Smart said this. He said, he says, I want guys that love the game. Do you truly love the game of football? And he says, if I have a young man that comes in my office and he wants to talk more about money than he does his love for the game, then we got a problem. We've got a problem. And that's not the type of kid that I want to build my team with, get a bunch of these type guys on the team, because I'm going to tell you what, you talk about problems in the locker room, Mike, when you got guys making X amount of dollars and this guy's making this and this guy's got a car and that guy doesn't have a car, and I mean, I'm just telling you, it can be really issues. Mike Loxley up at Maryland most recently said that, he lost his locker room. Too many guys were worried about too many things other than winning.
Locks is like the king of the relationship. So when a guy like that says that he's lost his locker room, that's saying something.
No question about it, Mike. And I mean, it's just like it's a condemnation of, again, where we're at. And like I said, we need guardrails. We need some real. I would love to see us put a commissioner in place and a kind of a czar a Nick Saban type guy who basically can run, be the Roger Goodell of college football. And I think that if we're trying to be a minor league to the National Football League. I think that's what I see us. That's the direction that we're going. And so if that's the case, then let's do it the right way, and let's make sure that we're giving everybody a chance to be successful, not totally just based on the Jimmies and the Joes and how much money you got.
It's never been about money for you. It's been about the love of the game, as you talked about a second ago. When I look back over your story, coming up in Jersey and Philly area, and then going out to Pasadena City Junior College, I mean, that had to be a big shift for you because you knew where you wanted to go. You knew you wanted to
Right.
be at the top level of college football, but you're sitting there as the hero, the hometown hero as a high school kid. How do you find your way to Pasadena, California, which would end up being a pretty special place to you later on in your coaching career as well?
Mike, it's just it's a tremendous story. A young kid from Phillipsburg, New Jersey. I like I said, good high school football player, but I knew that if I wanted to play, be an elite level player, that I was going to have to make the transition from wide receiver to tight end. And had size, had some athletic ability, really, caught a lot of balls, that type of thing. But I had to get physically bigger. And so I started to do my evaluation on junior colleges. And at the time, Pasadena City College, under the direction of Harvey Hyde as the head coach, I mean, they were killing it, the national junior college champions. And so I went out there, we visited, I made a decision to become a Pasadena City College Lancer. And we lost one game in 2 years, Mike. Had an amazing run. I lived about a mile and a half from the Rose Bowl. My current wife, was my girlfriend at the time, and she came out to see me in Pasadena, and we snuck in the Rose Bowl, and we're sitting at the 50-yard line, and the place is empty, and we're just absolutely in awe of the greatness that permeates that stadium. That you sit the setting in the Arroyo Canyon right there. I mean, it just there's nothing like it, Mike. And we played in the National Junior College Rose Bowl, and then I went on and played at the University of Illinois. But the Rose Bowl, Pasadena, California, will always be very, very special to me. And my relationship with that stadium, with that place. Mike, we talked. We won a national championship in there. I went in there with Florida State, and we beat Auburn for the national title. And just so many amazing memories of our time in Pasadena. And it's funny, I just got off the phone with Coach Hyde a little bit before I got on with you, and we to this day, I mean, I love him like a father, and he's a wonderful man, and he's been amazingly instrumental in helping me with the big decisions that I've had to make in my coaching career.
Need to move to North Carolina, within North Carolina, or away from North Carolina? Whether it's the Triangle, the Triad, or beyond, XL Moving and Storage is the company you can trust. Local, reliable, award-winning, and stress-free, XL's team handles every detail so you don't have to. Get your free quote today at xlms.com. That's EXCELMS.com. And tell them David Glenn sent you.
We're talking with Tim Brewster here on Bold North State Football Weekly on the North Carolina Sports Network. I'm Mike Waddell. And Tim, you started on the East Coast in Jersey, and then you go out to the West Coast in Pasadena. Then it's back to Champaign-Urbana and the University of Illinois, where you were the captain of the Fighting Illini, and you also had a very special time in the Rose Bowl. Tell me about that experience as a player in the Rose Bowl, and what type of an impression that place made on you now as you've gone from the junior college Rose Bowl to the Rose Bowl. I mean, the granddaddy of them all. You probably even got a chance to get interviewed by Keith Jackson. Whoa, Nelly.
To the granddaddy, Mike. And it was so, we had such a great run. I redshirted my first year at Illinois, okay, and so I get bigger and stronger, and then my second year at Illinois, we played in Coach Bear Bryant's last game as a football coach, the 1982 Liberty Bowl in Memphis, Tennessee, and that was amazing, and so we knew we had a really good football team coming back for my senior year at Illinois, and obviously the goal is to go to the Rose Bowl, and Illinois hadn't been to the Rose Bowl in forever, and so we opened the season 120 degrees in Columbia, Missouri, and I mean it was unbelievably hot. We lose the game. We open up the season 0-1 in our in our year, but you know what? Just give so much credit to Mike White, the leadership of our football team, our captains, the people that, the players that really stayed committed to the process and exactly what we were trying to accomplish. And we got on a run there, Mike, where we won 9 games in a row. We were the first team in the history of the Big Ten to go through an undefeated regular season record against all Big Ten teams. And, and as you get closer and closer, we're going, we had an amazing home schedule. We had Michigan at home. We had Ohio State at home. And we're playing for an opportunity to represent the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl. And I mean, the stakes were amazing. It was like no other time in the history of football at Illinois. I mean, you talk about electricity, Mike, electric environments, really just amazing. And then as we got closer, it was like, okay, we can do this, we can do this. And we beat Michigan, we beat Ohio State, and we became the representative for the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl. And we had a team meeting, and Coach White, they had voted on captains for the Rose Bowl, and it came out that I was going to be one of the captains. And I mean, just one of the greatest moments of my life to know that, I was going back to Pasadena, not only as a player and as a participant, but as a captain of a Rose Bowl team. And it was just amazing, Mike. I would just, we went out there to Pasadena. Now, like I told you, we didn't have no indoor facilities at the time. And so, we left December 18th for a January 2nd ball game. And, worked extremely hard, left a little bit out there on the field, was enjoying the sights and scenery around Los Angeles. And hey, Mike, and by the way, I hit the jackpot because 2 nights before the game, I asked my wife to marry me, and she said yes.
41 years later, it's still going strong.
I mean, and so, again, it's just like I said, there's just so many things to be thankful for and blessed about the Rose Bowl. And, we go in the game and we didn't play as well. But it was an amazing experience. I was telling you, Mike, I was most valuable player for Illinois in the Rose Bowl. And it was a time that we'll never forget, that the Illini fans can be so proud of. It was an amazing, opportunity for me to be a captain and kind of retrace my steps back to Pasadena, and then also continue, on being a coach at Florida State and winning a national championship at the Rose Bowl, and, playing Oregon in the semifinals of the playoffs there. So I'm sure I'm probably not done yet, Mike, with the Rose Bowl.
Well, I hope to see you back there because I'll probably get some good tickets now that we're partners on the radio. So you've been a player in the classic Big Ten. I mean, before this big expansion, you were in the classic Big Ten. And like you said, it was your Fighting Illini team that went first through that gauntlet at 9-0. Then you come back to the Big Ten after coaching in the NFL and in the ACC and college football. You come back to the Big Ten as the head coach of the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Now, here's one of these goofy what-else questions that I'll ask you that you've probably never been asked before. You remember walking into that locker room as a player where you would go on the road in the Big Ten and what it was like to play on the field at all these different stadiums. And then you've gone back as a coach and you've walked into the locker room with your team Now it's your team, and you've been on the sidelines there. What were the memories that transferred from being a player to being a coach that remained true to themselves as you've gone from these Big Ten stadiums here and there?
Well, Mike, it's there's no other conference in America, I don't believe, more steeped in tradition and history than the Big Ten. And when you think about playing on the road at Michigan, you think about playing on the road at Ohio State. There's just so many big games in the conference, and it really it ended up a little bit differently for me, Mike, because I never saw myself going back as the head coach at the University of Minnesota in the Big Ten. I always saw myself in my dreams in thinking about this is going back as the head coach of the Illini, and wanting to be and lead that football program. But it didn't work out that way. And I certainly was blessed and honored to be the head coach at the University of Minnesota. Certainly enjoyed it. And again, like I said, I was there for 4 seasons and enjoyed every minute of it. Would have liked to have won a few more games. Would have liked to have done a few more things there. But there's nothing that I didn't feel good about what we did as a staff and as a football team there. We had some big wins. We went to two consecutive bowl games. We recruited at a level. We had a 14th ranked recruiting class at the University of Minnesota, and that's unprecedented. That's unheard of. And we recruited at an extremely high level. The hardest thing, the hardest thing about it is, Mike, and you well know this, is you just have to, sustain success, and you've got to just keep climbing. You got to keep building. And we ran out of time at Minnesota, but again, so thankful to have been a head coach in the Big Ten. Those jobs don't come easy. They're sought after jobs, and Joel Maturi gave me that opportunity at Minnesota, and I'll always be grateful and thankful to him. And but again, you know what, Mike, that opportunity allowed me to continue to grow as a coach, because I spent some time in reflection after that job and after I got let go by Minnesota, and really wrote down thoughts and notes on things that I felt like I did good, things I do differently, all those different types of things. And I really tried to use it as a growing experience for me. And I really think it helped me immensely to grow as a human being and as a football coach.
Now, you mentioned a name a second ago that probably flew by about 98% of the world. You worked for a guy at the University of Minnesota named Joel Maturi. Now, most people don't know who Joel Maturi is. I know him because he was also the AD at Miami, Ohio for a while. But most people would know him because he has been glorified, blown up, exploded in terms of popular culture as Matt Foley, the character played by Chris Farley on Saturday Night Live, who lives in a van down by the river. And it was that experience that Chris Farley had playing for Joel Maturi that led to that rah rah, let's go, let's get in there, and all that kind of stuff that he did on SNL. When you watched that skit, did you see Joel Maturi in Chris Farley's Matt Foley character?
There's no question that I did, Mike. The funny thing about it is that Joel is such a serious guy, to see the Saturday Night Live skit and see, it just very, very cool thing. And you know what? Joel took a lot of heat. He took a lot of heat about hiring Tim Brewster. Tim Brewster's an assistant coach and hadn't been a head coach, and now he's a head coach in the Big Ten. But you know what? We, like I said, we did some really good things there, and I will always, like I said, be appreciative of Joel and him giving me that opportunity.
Hey, y'all, David Glenn here from the North Carolina Sports Network. When I'm in Wrightsville Beach, my go-to hangout is Jimmy's, the best local bar for sports fans, live music, cold drinks, and coastal vibes. No matter your favorite team, Jimmy's Bar is the place that sports fans from all across the Carolinas can call their home away from home. The next time you visit Jimmy's Bar in Wrightsville Beach, tell them DG sent you.
Opportunities are tough to come by in the Big Ten or just breaking into college football coaching. And your story about how you came to be an assistant coach at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where we met back in 1991. You'd already been there a couple of years, but it wasn't a road paved in gold for you to go there. You had to use your grit and trademark Tim Brewster work ethic to demonstrate that you had what it took to be on Matt Brown's staff. How did that happen?
Mike, I mean, it's an amazing story, but I was a high school coach at Lafayette Central Catholic High School in Lafayette, Indiana, and I was teaching government and economics, and we were washing the uniforms after the game on Friday nights. My wife was a cheerleading coach. I mean, it was a one-stop shop for sure. And but I also, I had my dreams. My dreams are huge, Mike, on what I was trying to accomplish as a coach, and so I thought about, I was a GA at Purdue. Okay, prior to being the head coach at Central Catholic, and so I wanted to get back in, into the college game, and I was thinking at the time, Mac Brown, for whatever reason, Mac he was at Tulane, and he was doing a heck of a job, and the college football world was talking about Mac Brown, and so, and I was always, Mike, truly enamored with the Tar Heel State. The Tar Heel State, the state of North Carolina, the Tar Heels. And so, I said to my wife, I said, sweetheart, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, because we had two sons at the time, my two older boys, and we were going to have a third one on the way. And I said to my wife, I said, sweetheart, I would love to coach in college. I'd love to go down to North Carolina. And I'd love to volunteer my services to Mac Brown as an assistant coach. And she looked at me like, excuse me, how much does a volunteer get paid? And I said, honey, it means exactly what it says. It's a volunteer. And I said, there's only one way that we can do this. And that is if you allow me to do this, if you continue to work at Federal Express, and I have the greatest wife in the world, and she made the commitment to allow. So anyhow, to make a long story short, Mike, I get in my pickup truck and I drive down to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and I walk in the football office, okay, and I walk up to this young lady. She was sitting in front of Mac Brown's office, and Miss Becky Medford. Okay, she was a personal assistant to Mac Brown, and I said, Miss Becky, I'm Tim Brewster, and I'd love to speak with Coach Brown. And she said, well, he's busy. Why would he want to speak with you? And I said, well, that remains to be seen. I'm not sure. And so she said, well, you're just going to have to sit and be patient. So I sat, Mike. It was about 2.5 hours. It was about 2.5 hours, and then Coach Brown came out of the goodness of his heart, and he looked at me and he said, this is crazy. Why did you do what you're doing? What are you doing? I said, Coach Brown, I said, I want to be a football coach in the worst way in college. More than anything, I want to work for you. I've got a background. I was a good football player. I've got a work ethic that's unmatched by anybody. And I have the world's greatest wife who's going to allow me to do this. And he said, you know what, Tim, he said, this is so crazy. He said, you get in your truck and going back to Indiana. He said, I'll think about this and I'll call you in a couple of days. And a couple of days later, Coach Brown called me and he said, do you totally understand what a volunteer means? And I said, yes, sir. It's good. I'm not going to make no money. He said, you're not going to make a nickel. And he said, you're going to be the first one in the building, the last one to leave. You're going to, whatever. We need donuts. We need a car wash. We need whatever. You're going to do it. And I said, absolutely, Coach. I'll be honored to be able to do this. And so, we did it. We did it, Mike. Crazy as it worked out, I ended up coaching the tight ends with Coach Brown that first year, and Then the second year, he named me a full-time assistant coach, and it began a run of 14 consecutive years, 14 not consecutive, but 14 years with Mac Brown as an assistant coach. And I mean, there's nobody in football that I have more respect for, that I love more, that did more for me than Mac Brown. And to have spent 14 years with him and all the wins we had and all the excitement we created at different, at North Carolina and at Texas, was just truly an amazing deal, Mike. North Carolina is a special place. The state of North Carolina is a special place. The people of the great state of North Carolina are amazingly special. And I'm fired up, Mike, to be here talking to you, man, about the Tar Heels.
Well, we're going to talk about all the teams in the state, 33 college football teams in the state of North Carolina, and a lot of great talent. Now, in a few weeks, we're going to get your opinion on Kendry Harrison, who's out of Reedsville, just an incredible athlete, the #1 high school tight end in America, as he is already verbally committed to the University of Oregon. We'll wait and see if he's going to come back. But I want to talk to you about another guy that you coached, one of the great tight ends in the history of college. Well, no, he didn't play college football. He only played pro football. We're talking about Antonio Gates, who is about to, on August 2nd, in Stark County, Ohio, Canton, going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And this is a guy that never played a snap of football in the Mid-American Conference at Kent State, but you saw something in this guy that made you think he could be a contributor for San Diego, and darn if he didn't end up having that Hall of Fame career. Tell us about the Tim Brewster, Antonio Gates evolution.
Well, Mike, it's just I had taken, was with Coach Brown at Texas, and then I got a job with Marty Schottenheimer with the San Diego Chargers to coach the tight ends. And so, I mean, I was fired up when I got the job, and I went in there and I was looking for, I wasn't looking for the everyday kind of guy in the NFL tight ends. Big blocking type tight end. I was looking for a guy that could change the game, looking for a guy that, Cam Cameron was the offensive coordinator, and he really did a nice job of utilizing personnel and athletes and creating matchups and getting the ball in the hands of the guys that deserved it. And so, I got this videotape from an agent of this kid, Antonio Gates. Knew nothing about the guy, didn't know. I'm sitting in my office and I say, bang, put the tape in. And so I put the tape in, and I'm looking at this 6'4", 260-pound kid who run, jump, big body, uses body, physical guy, high point the basketball, box out, do all the things, And I've always felt like, Mike, that the best tight ends are on the basketball court. That's where you find them. You find the great ones, and so, I'm watching this kid play, and the next thing you know, Mike, I'm on the phone talking to this kid and trying to convince him, hey, you don't need the NBA. You need the NFL. You're an NFL football player. And he says, you really think so, Coach Brew? And I said, absolutely. And so he had a workout down at Kent State, and I think only 4 teams showed up. I was the only tight end coach that showed up. Not many people were concerning themselves with Antonio Gates, and so I'm watching him playing a pickup basketball game, Mike. I'm watching this kid run the court, and I'm watching this kid, go up and tomahawk dunk the basketball and do some things that are just really, really impressive. And so we get through the basket. Then I say, hey, listen, come with me. We're going to go over here, and I'm going to throw balls at you, and I'm going to push you through a football related workout, and so, he had a little bit of an ankle injury, and he was, so we're going through this workout, and I'm like, hey, it's enough. Enough is enough. I don't want anybody else seeing the kid, seeing it, and so, we shut the workout down. And so I get on the plane, Mike, and I go back to San Diego, and I go charging into Marty Schottenheimer's office, and he's like, "What the hell's the matter with you, Brew?" And I'm like, "Coach, I just seen the tight end, man. It's gonna freaking be a dominant NFL tight end. He's gonna change the game. He's gonna be able to be flexed out. He's gonna play a traditional tight end, line up in the slot, formation, motion shift, do all the different things that we can utilize his abilities." And Marty looks at me and he says, "Well, I'm going to tell you what, okay? Chances are we're not going to get him because I'm not going to use a draft pick on a guy that never played college football." And I said, "Marty, oh man, a seventh, a sixth, whatever, supplemental, whatever it takes, we have to get this guy with us." And he says, "Nope." He says, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, Brew." He said, but unless he goes undrafted, we will not get him. And so I was like, "Oh well, here we go." So I just began the process of really recruiting him, Mike. I recruited the mess. I called him every day. I called him at night before bed. I called him, talked to his parents, talked to recruited the living mess out of the guy. And lo and behold, here comes draft day, and we're getting through the draft, and I'm sweating bullets, Mike. You know that. I mean, I'm sweating bullets thinking about somebody's going to break my heart, because they're going to take this kid. And somehow, some way, I mean, and there wasn't very many people that went to his workouts, so they didn't really get a chance to see the kid, and they didn't draft him, and so he went undrafted. 5 minutes after the draft, I'm on the phone with him. I offered him $3,500. The heist of the century in the National Football League was us getting Antonio Gates for $3,500, Mike, to come be a Charger, and the rest is history, man. It was just amazing.
That's Moneyball. You invented Moneyball in football before Billy Beane did it in Oakland.
No question. No question. And you know what? He just we built that relationship. We had a lot of tough moments. I coached him extremely hard, Mike. I told him time is our enemy. We've got to get it done today. We can't wait till tomorrow. But I'll tell you what the kid did. The kid never flinched. He never backed up a step, Mike. He never backed up a step. He kept moving, charging forward. Every opportunity I gave him to, okay, I said, "Okay, here's a test for you, Gates. This is a test." He aced everything. And then I got him in preseason. I got him in some games, and you could just tell this is the stage this kid's supposed to be on. This is not too big for him in any way, shape, or form. He is prepared. He wants to be here. And I'm going to just tell you, every opportunity we gave him, Mike, he excelled. He absolutely excelled. And, we ended up starting him midway through his rookie year, and the rest is history. He ended up with a 16-year career and more touchdowns than anybody in the history at the tight end position. And just, this weekend, joining him in Canton, Ohio, Mike. I mean, you talk about goosebumps, you talk about tears, you talk about moments. This is what you live for. A moment like this with a player that we both poured everything we got into making him a player, into him being a player, and to see him, I'm really excited, Mike. On Friday is the gold jacket ceremony. Okay. It's a ceremony in which they will present him with his gold jacket. It's kind of a private deal. I'm going to be at that. And then also on Saturday, in the stadium, the enshrinement ceremony, it'll just be incredible.
When you talk about the great tight ends, I mean, just there in San Diego, you have one of the greatest tight ends of all time, and Kellen Winslow. I still can see him being carried off the field after that playoff game. Also in the AFC of that era, Russ Francis, modern day Gronkowski, Tony Gonzalez, another basketball player. He played basketball at Cal. Now it's Travis Kelce. When you look at those guys who changed the game in their own unique ways, what made him a Pro Football Hall of Famer?
It's just his desire to be great. He had no he had no thought whatsoever, Mike, about being a good player. He was from inner city Detroit. Um, his competitive nature and his desire to be great were amazing. And obviously he was blessed with a skill set. He had a wonderful skill set. His hands were just truly amazing ball skills. But again, too, let's not, he was a tough guy, a true tough guy. I tell people, his dad wanted him to be the heavyweight boxing champ of the world. Gates trained in Kronk Gym in inner city Detroit, so we're with Tommy Hitman Hearns. I think that was the thing about Gates is that, from an athletic standpoint, he was special, he was unique. But more importantly, just from a mindset standpoint, Mike, he was not gonna be defeated.
Michael Berard, Managing Director Investments with the Founders Group at Stifel, works with a select group of high net worth individuals and institutions to develop and implement investment plans tailored to their specific objectives and risk tolerances. If you are interested in highly personalized, well-researched guidance and outstanding personal service, you can contact Michael at 984-364-2002. That's 984-364-2002. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
All football season long, we'll have Coach Tim Brewster with us here on Bold North State Football Weekly. I'm Mike Waddell, and Coach, as we round out this little preview edition of the show in the late summer, I want to get to some current topics, just some quick rapid fire things going on in the world of football. And one of the guys that you've worked with in the past for 2 years at Jackson State and at Colorado is primetime Deion Sanders. And it was just announced, he announced earlier this week that he has overcome bladder cancer and he is coming back to the Buffaloes for a third season. Were you excited to see that he had decided to stick with this? And what are your prospects for the Buffaloes in Colorado as you head into 2025?
College football is blessed to have Deion Sanders as a coach. As a leader of men. I was with him at Jackson State. The job that he did there was nothing short of amazing, with nothing, didn't have two nickels at Jackson State. And just, but his ability to lead men is just absolutely outstanding. Went with him to the University of Colorado. He's building that program there. I just think the world of Coach Prime. And like I said, football needs him. He loves these kids so much. And, his ability to relate to kids, to help kids see the big picture, see the long run. And he always said, it's not about the money that you're going to make, here with NIL and revenue sharing and this and that. We'll get you to the real money in the National Football League. And I think that Coach Prime does an amazing job with these kids of making them see the big picture, of seeing what's truly important in life. And I love him. I absolutely love the guy to death. We're all so fortunate for him that he is going to be just fine. The bladder cancer has been removed, and he's got a lot of years of football in front of him, man. And I'm going to tell you what. I mean, it's absolutely incredible the job he's done at the University of Colorado. I mean, every game is a sellout. The excitement that he's drawn to that program, the excitement he drew to Jackson State. He's really what it's all about.
Back when you were on Mac Brown's first staff at North Carolina, one of the things that Mac used to talk about ad nauseum was winning the state championship. The state champions in 2024 weren't wearing red or Carolina blue. They were wearing Duke blue, and Manny Diaz is back for his second year. He has a brand new quarterback coming in from Tulane, not exactly a football power, but Simpson is a pretty good player. And right now, it'd be hard to bet against Duke as being the state champions again because NC State, they're a little iffy. North Carolina has replaced 70-10, 70 out of 105 roster spots. When you look at these three teams, Duke, NC State, and North Carolina, who stands out as being the smart pick to be the best out of that threesome?
Well, you'd like to think in this dynamic that we're in right now with NIL, and Bill Belichick probably has the best opportunity to put together a roster that has the ability to win a state championship in the state of North Carolina, to really do some good things. But there's so like we had talked about, Mike, there's so much more involved with the chemistry of the team, how the team's going to come together. 70 new players. Manny Diaz is an outstanding football coach, has done a tremendous job at Duke. My son played for Manny at the University of Texas, and he's a passionate, excitable guy. Really creates a good environment for his players to play in. And then, kind of like the old steady of the group is Coach Dorn. Just kind of no frills, not a whole lot of flair. But you know what? His football team is going to be prepared. His football team is going to be ready to win each and every week. And I think from a stability standpoint, from a fundamental standpoint, how a team is prepared each and every week, I think Dave does as good a job as anybody in the country. He really does. And the game has changed a little bit more for him because of losing players to the portal, that type of thing. It being so much more about money. Are the funds? Does he have the finances to really compete against the other teams for the elite? The elite money players. And so it'll be interesting for sure. I like I said, we talked about it, Mike. It's like, it's really going to be interesting to see how it works with Bill Belichick. How is he going to adapt to kids, to parents, to, that dynamic in college football. He's never done. I don't know, Mike, has he ever been a college coach?
No.
I don't think so. I was a player for the New York Giants back in 1984 in training camp, and Bill was our linebacker coach. And obviously, he was a very bright, sharp guy. Obviously, knows how to win, and that's what it's all about. Really putting together a team and going and winning.
It's going to be so much fun talking ball with you this fall. Coach Tim Brewster here on Bold North State Football Weekly. Thanks a lot. We look forward to getting to know you a little bit better, going back into those recruiting battles because you are the greatest single recruiter in the history of college football. And we have you right here on Bold North State Football Weekly, brother. You have a great trip to Canton. Give our best to the gold jacket wearing former Kent State Golden Flashes basketball player Antonio Gates. I was working in Akron. He broke my heart a few times on the basketball court. You and Kathy have a great time up there in God's country around Northeast Ohio, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Mike, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
NC Pork, raising the bacon, raising the bar.